Hi everyone, this is Kona, and I'm going to go through, it says week 5 notes, but technically it's a lot about claims and response variables. So null or alternative. So it's really important, and on the quiz for this week you're going to need to know for each claim whether it's the null or alternative. Now this builds off of what we did last week, so hopefully this shouldn't be a big deal for you. But here are your different examples. So eating chocolate is not a factor in getting acne. And what is the part that you need to be looking at? It's the is not a factor. And then if you looked at some of the examples that you had from last week in the notes where you had different example words that determined null, alternative, is not a factor is in fact a null hypothesis. Toddlers should watch fewer than 2 hours. The fewer than is an alternative. The average height for a woman is the 64 inches. That's your null, because it's an equals to. The number of Skittles in a bag is related. So is related is an alternative. So is not a factor means nothing going on, so null. Fewer than is alternative. Is, so you are saying here's a specific number is your null, and is related is alternative. So this should be just kind of a refresher from last week. The next one is whether it's numeric or categorical. So for this one, you're supposed to decide whether the response variable is categorical or numerical. The response variable is the one being measured. So that's the variable that's actually being measured, and is also sometimes referred to in other classes as the dependent variable, or the DV. So I don't know if you remember from other classes, independent variable and dependent variable. Well, the response variable is your dependent variable. So that's the actual thing that's being measured. Now that's really important because when you're going through here, there's a lot of things that might confuse you, and you might think, oh, we're measuring this one, or oh, we're measuring that one. But you need to just think about which one are we actually measuring. So what is it we're actually measuring? And then determine, is it numeric, so is it an actual number, or is it categorical, is it a category? Now those two things should be refresher from, gosh, I think the first week of class where we talked about number versus category. So this one's pretty easy. The number of births is positively related to the employment rate. So what we're actually measuring here is our number of births, but technically we're also measuring unemployment rate. And in this case, that's okay because both number of births and, if you wanted to say unemployment rate, because we're kind of looking at both of them, they're both a number, so they're numeric. So not a big deal. Older Democrats are more likely to have watched MSNBC in the past year than younger Democrats. Well, for this one, it's categorical because what are we measuring? Whether they watched MSNBC or not. And so this one we might have a percentage, but at the same time, the percentage is just a yes, no. Yes, we watched it. No, we didn't watch it. So it is categorical. 40% of people go back to school because they want a promotion, 20% because they lost their job, 10% because they want a different career, and 30% aren't sure. Now that's categorical because all of these different percentages are measuring why people go back to school. So they go back to school, well, that's not a number. It's a 40% want a promotion, so it's promotion, lost job, want a different career, aren't sure. Well, those are categories, which is why this is categorical. The average height of women is 5 feet 4 inches. Well, that's numeric because we're actually talking about a specific height, because that's what we're actually measuring here and looking at. More than 70% of Americans are over the age of 18. More than 70% of Americans are over the age of 18, aren't sure who to vote for. Well, that's categorical because what we're measuring is who they want to vote for, whether it's Trump, Clinton, third party, but it's still categorical. So, numeric, categorical, make sure you look at, and the things that I haven't read and underlined here, you aren't going to have to do that for the quiz. It was just more of I wanted to make sure that you knew what I was kind of basing, whether it's categorical or numeric, off of. I just wanted to make sure you understood which word that was. The next one is for the null and alternative hypothesis, and that's deciding whether it's which side, right, left, or both. And by side, what we're referring to is tail. So here it even says sides and tails. Those can be used interchangeably. So which side, and this is how you kind of determine it. So the first thing, you're going to be given a statement, and you look at the claim and decide if it's the null or alternative. So that's kind of back up here. So just like here, null or alternative. So the first thing you do is determine whether it's null or alternative, just like up there. But then the next thing you do is that if it's null, you have to write out the alternative. Well, you already did this. You should have done this last week for your assignment, so it shouldn't be a big deal to write out the alternative. If it is the alternative hypothesis, you can just skip straight to step 3. So in step 3, you decide if the alternative hypothesis is right, left, or both sides, both tails. So for this one, it's the right side if the alternative hypothesis is a more than. It's a left side if it's a less than, and it's going to be both sides if it's a not equals to. And so you're probably like, okay, what does that mean? Well, let's do a couple of examples. So decide whether the statement claim uses the left, right, or both sides. The word tail and sides are interchangeable. So younger people are less likely to vote than older people. So less likely is an alternative claim or an alternative hypothesis. And so that's why I have alternative less likely. So step 2, we don't have to do anything because it's already alternative. And then less likely, so if we come back up here to our little cheat sheet here, less likely is left side, so it's left side. 2/3 of Republicans who are over 45 plan to vote for Trump. So step 1, it's the null. And why is it null? Because 2/3 is equal to the number of Republicans who plan to vote for Trump. So that's an equal to, and remember the not equal to is our alternative. So for step 2, we have to take that null and we have to make it into an alternative. So in this case, 2/3 is not equal to the number of Republicans who plan to vote for Trump. So the not equal to, which is now what we use for step 3, they're not equal to, is a both sides. So then the next one, more than 2/3 of Democrats who are over 45 plan to vote for Clinton. So it is an alternative because it's the more than, are the words that we're looking at here. Step 2, because it's alternative, we don't have to flip it to a null. And a more than, if we look up at our little cheat sheet, is a right side. So right there, right side. So there you go. There's some extra notes that will go along with the rest of the readings that you had to do for this week, and it should also help you with the quiz. So this is just a supplement to the readings and the other content, but I just kind of wanted to go through these examples to kind of help you out.